I would like to, at this time, I would like to ask anybody to disclose any pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. They can do it now or anytime during the meeting. We'll move on to the agenda, Public Works, Airport Waste Management. Number A, waste storage equipment and storage. And I'll turn that to Tyler.
Other reasons, I'll get better. So as you guys saw, we sent a report over. It's about that time of the year where a garbage truck starts looking for a nice warm place to sleep at night and needs to go in for its final checkup before next year's operations begin. We have contacted the local company that we normally rent a stall from. The rent has gone up considerably. We're now looking at a little bit more for rent this year for one stall than we were looking at last year for two, which to me is rather unacceptable. Not only that, the garbage truck is in obviously requirement of some pretty serious repairs. As we outlined in there, our current estimates are sitting in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. And that's not including what gets found once we dig into the project. So basically, we're just coming in with the idea here, no better time than now to get a new piece of equipment based off of generally what we're expecting to get from the surplusing of our current equipment, as well as what we have in reserves and the repairs that we would save versus fixing the old truck. We're estimating it's probably only going to be in the range of $25,000 of an impact to the community itself. Whether we do that through the capital work, public works capital equipment line next year. As you know, we have a standing 150 to 175,000 a year that we can pull from to furnish that. So there isn't any additional expense. We just won't be able to buy another piece of equipment with that money. And then also we'll be looking at going to the industrial mall. There's currently a stall open in the back there. Great space for what waste management can do with it. The only caveat to that is it needs a door. But with the current estimates, you're looking at a 1 to 2 year return on investment for buying that door versus just storing it off-site. So we've given you guys kind of 4 high-level options. I did have another thought actually just recently that if you guys want us to look into used equipment or a potential lease option, we can present you with that information as well. But generally speaking, the municipality doesn't like getting into lease agreements, so open to.
Just as an add-on to that, I think that we're not surprised that we're here, quite honestly. Like when we ended up being in this situation where, you know, we had to make the decision whether we were going to try and take this over, if we were going to contract it out, the opportunity presented itself to buy the current equipment. I mean, ideally, sure, we'd like to have made that last as long as possible. But it's like your own vehicle. You get to a point where do you want to continually putting money into that vehicle, or do you take your losses and then try and get something new? In a perfect world, we would have came to you last year and said, Jan 1, we want to buy a brand new vehicle, or we want to lease a brand new vehicle. But again, at that time, I think council wanted to take a cautious approach to, you know, to wait the 6 or 8 months to say, well, do we want to take this service on full time or not? You guys have since made that decision. So this seems like the next logical step would be to look at the vehicle, look at the repairs required, look at what our options are. And we believe what we're bringing forward to you is what we recommend.
One more important note to make is these repairs that we're making to it don't necessarily help with the reliability of the equipment itself. They basically just get it to a roadworthy state to current legislation. It doesn't address problems that we've had with the fuel injectors. It doesn't address the compaction cylinders on the back, which are about 10 grand to replace and leak like a gallon of hydraulic oil per week. Things of that nature, like blown hoses. None of that is accounted for in that work. That is specifically just work to fix basically the frame and a couple of other small items.
Councilor Knowles.
Thank you. I haven't had to speak into one of these yet. Couple of questions. So the existing truck that's there now, would it have any sort of resale value on open market, or is it pretty much turned into a write-off or an emergency use vehicle if we keep it?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to keep it for emergency use because it would have to be safety to stay on the road, which is kind of what brought us into this large expense right now. We are expecting either some use for it internally, whether we look at repurposing it without that compaction box on the back, and maybe look at turning it into something else that we can use because the motor isn't that bad. And then again, there's still a small surplus value associated to that.
Okay, thank you. And my other question would be, so the new truck, would you be looking at an existing, just a traditional garbage truck, or looking at something that's maybe more of a hybrid model or more geared towards kind of long-term use as things are kind of moving into the EV sector?
Right now, the quotes that we've got were only based on diesel engine. We can look at a hybrid, but I'm not sure it's quite trusted enough for our local use rate.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking if we're going to be leasing something long-term or purchasing something with long-term value, that it might be something worth just at least having that information on hand.
But we did do a lot of research in regards to different models and like smaller ones, bigger ones, and taking it into consideration, right? And we came back around to what you're suggesting.
Yeah, we looked at initially getting maybe something on like a F550 chassis, right? Bit of a smaller box on it, but a little more maneuverable at the same time. The problem with that is the smaller box not only is a smaller box, it's also less compaction. So we're going to be running into several additional trips. Initially, we were kind of looking at it like, well, if it's one more trip and we can save 50 grand, it makes sense. Unfortunately, it was going to wind up being a little bit more than that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. In pulling from next year's capital, were there any equipment foreseen like that you need in the near future, or is everything kind of?
Yeah, so street sweeper is kind of our number one in terms of public works. We put a substantial amount of work into that piece of equipment this winter, or this spring, I should say. Rebuilt the majority of the vehicle itself. So we're not anticipating having as many issues with that this year. Sidewalk sweeper would be the next, but knock on wood, so far it's been doing pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Shine.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. How long would it be before you receive this new piece of equipment? Would you still have to put out the money to do the repairs, to keep it on the road, or are you expecting a quick delivery if we give the okay for it?
So the goal would be to have something here in place before Jan 1 so that we don't have to do any repairs to the current equipment. That just comes down to procurement. So of course, with council's approval, we'd probably look more at just getting a variety of quotes versus the traditional tender out for a 3 or 4 week long process. We'll just basically check the market and see what's available for us between new vehicles or used, new to us.
And with the door, would your crew be doing the installation of the door, or is the installation above and beyond the cost?
Right now, our costs are quite varying, anywhere from 10,000 for supply with no install, to some previous quotes that we've got that were around 35, including install. So we'd much rather have a company who's familiar with this do the install, just given that these are actually surprisingly dangerous when you start talking about overhead doors and the torsion springs especially, so.
This will be this year's budget. I was thinking it was next year's.
No, this is this year's.
Oh, that's a different story then. Okay, we would have to.
Is everybody done? I have a couple comments and a couple questions. So like the quotes, like it says approximately 275,000, like that's hard to say yes and then comes in at 350,000.
Yeah, so
is
the
that?
last quote we got was 273 plus HST, so hence the approximately 275. Again, these quotes are dated, so we do have to re-up them, but generally we're looking at approximately that value.
And what would to lease a brand, and that's for brand new?
That's brand new, yeah.
So what would a lease be? I know that's not something we normally do, but from what I understand, it's something that most municipalities do. Like what would a lease be?
We looked into that as well. Lease is about 9,500 per month. So again, you're looking at within 2 to 3 years, do you want to lease one or do you want to own one for 10, for roughly that value?
And when we talked about all this money that we were going to save or make by doing the garbage pickup, but I haven't seen any hard numbers to justify us doing this.
I guess I disagree in that we brought a pretty thorough financial statement to you guys last month before the approval of us to continue on with the survey.
So we would pay for this truck in a year,
I think
all the
we're
money that
closer-
we're making.
We're closer to about 50,000 annually savings, not including recycling. If you include recycling, yeah, we're probably talking like 2 years. If you're including only the increase in revenues and decrease in expenses, you're looking at probably 5 years.
So when we say save 50,000, that's whatever we were paying for garbage pickup, all in with our people and the new truck and everything. I'm just having a hard time justifying all this, because I got asked questions, right? Like, it's a big layout and, are we going to, is this still the plan going forward? Are we throwing good money after bad money to keep this going? That's my question.
Well, no, I think we showed last month, clearly it's a good idea for us to keep this under the Public Works umbrella. We're obviously doing good with our financials as per the update that we gave you guys. I think we're just gonna keep looking better as time goes on. In terms of throwing bad money at bad money, I mean, or bad money at good money,
Mhm.
whichever way you wanna look at it, there's nothing wrong with buying a piece of equipment. We spent $120,000 in 2019 buying 2 1-tons. Everybody seemed to think that was a good idea. I'd see that kind of the same as having a new garbage truck. It's a piece of equipment that's used every single day. It's one of the most important ones in terms of levels of service and what our citizens are looking for. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to have a competent, reliable piece of equipment for us to provide that service with.
So we wouldn't have to store, sorry, Counselor Shine, we wouldn't have to store this inside. We would just plug it in and away it goes in the morning?
No, we still put that over in indoor storage, much like we do with a lot of our fleet. We try and keep as much as we can indoors, especially the systems that are outfitted with hydraulics.
So we're still replacing the door to keep this inside.
Yeah, and that gets into a greater discussion of where waste management's home is per se, right? We don't have any room at the shop for them necessarily. When we took this over, they were down at the car wash and it's been a bit of a hassle trying to actually include them in at the current compound so far. But the industrial mall actually solves that problem. It's got washrooms, it's got a lunchroom, it's got floor drains for storage. It's got another office for us to store our tools in. It's actually a very good viable option for the department.
Counselor Shine, do you have something else?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ferguson. So when he was talking about a lease, I'm just thinking like, when I had a lease before and I wanted to turn it in, they took into account any of the damages that were on the lease and affected going into your next lease. Would that be the same concept behind a lease for a garbage truck?
Yeah, they take into account damage for sure. And the specific thing actually with the garbage truck that I was surprised to learn is the lease doesn't include any defects or repairs that are required.
Oh, good to know.
Oh, yes. Counselor Martin.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble hearing Tyler. Maybe you can turn the mic towards yourself, Tyler, but, what about a gently used garbage truck, if there is such a thing? A couple, 3 years old. A lot of people buy vehicles that are a couple of years old. They've been well maintained and have you looked at that possibility, Tyler?
Yeah, that was actually what I said kind of right at the beginning of the meeting was we would be open to, with council's direction, looking at some newer to us versions that have been maybe out in the market for a couple of years, or maybe a previous lease vehicle. I know it seemed like it was a pretty quick turnaround to get a lease unit, but it was a bit of a longer turnaround to get a purchased unit. So for me, I mean, if you can lease me a truck, why don't you just sell me that truck? And we can have those negotiations and discussions with the suppliers once we find something suitable.
Is there any tax advantage to a lease, Brandy? I guess that, I'd be directing that to Brandy, or not really.
No, well, it depends. I mean, we're not a business, right? So the reason the town generally doesn't like to lease is because it's more expensive. So, if we have the money, we just buy it because and especially now, I would expect with the interest rates being so crazy that it would be more expensive than usual. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
tax wise doesn't affect us. Where this
Yeah,
affects us is when I read this
Okay.
report, I thought it was for next year. So it being this year, that would create budget issues as well. We would have to discuss depending on what council decides. Go
Personally, I'd
ahead,
like,
Gord, if you weren't finished.
okay, no, yeah, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, ideally, if you have the money, buy it outright. I would like to see some pricing on gently used garbage trucks.
Counselor Knowles.
That's all.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank you.
Ferguson. Yeah, in the interest of moving this along, I would be in favor of option 4, to procure the new truck, but I'd like to see a list, of prices, on those trucks, as well as, perhaps some forward-thinking ones and some gently used ones, just so we have basically an à la carte of, the options on the table, so we can make that decision, and the purchasing versus leasing. So, I think as a council, we have that, understanding of, what the cost difference might be.
Counselor Shine.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. If I agree with what Gord, Counselor, left his name, agree with that, can we make that decision if we get that information within the next 1 or 2 days and say, yes, go ahead with purchasing a new one, or do we have to come back and have another meeting?
We can bring it to the next meeting on the, what is
Monday?
13th?
13th.
Yeah, November 13th, because we skip one and then it's the 2nd, or however it played out, so we don't meet again until the 13th. But I mean, we can certainly set that up for you guys and bring a report with whatever options that we have found at that time.
Just one caveat to that, though. We could bring that to the committee of the whole, but we would be asking for a resolution at the council meeting immediately following, just because of the tight timelines, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, to fix the current garbage truck, we literally have to take the whole actual like big white piece on the back that holds and compacts the garbage off, and make some repairs underneath to the frame and the bottom side of that unit itself. So it's a major job. I think we're looking at 15,000 alone just in the welding. So
Great. Counselor McQuay.
Thank you. So Brandy, you'll be able to bring that information about the budget, because you had said that it's different now that it's this year's budget, so that'll be,
Well, that council will have to decide where the money's coming from because we don't
Right.
have the money. So we will have to have it allocated.
so would that be better for us to maybe meet prior if we have to make a resolution right after? Is that gonna, I'm just
Well, I
thinking
mean,
ahead.
I guess depends how we package what the options are, right? So
Mhm.
there are some reserves, I think, that we could use.
Yeah, but we only have 150.
No, but the what's the term for the waste management? Can we borrow from that fund?
We
The
don't have any waste management.
no, the closure costs, the reserves set aside for.
Oh,
closures.
no, that's not.
Not
no,
operations,
that's-
only for the site. Because
Oh,
we've used that for the creation of the new site, right? But not for equipment.
No,
Yeah.
you only use it for closing. You don't use it for anything,
Hmm.
is the intention of it.
Right, yeah, is the intention, right?
We've never used it.
Okay, I thought we dug into it when we opened the new landfill. No?
and the intention is to close it, but if we need to take 100,000 this year and put 100,000 next year to balance it out.
And council can agree to anything, like any of our reserves, but what they're in there is
Yeah.
only what they can be used for unless we get, supposed to be a bylaw from council changing the intent.
Yeah. Yeah, so we could bring the options forward at the committee of the whole.
Okay, I just didn't want us
Yeah.
to be in there and go, right, and then have to make the resolution. That was all.
We can also, me and Sue can work with everyone and have multiple resolutions prepared. That's normally what we do if
Yeah.
council's being presented with options, so that's not a problem. We can take care of that.
Okay. I was just more thinking the money. That's all.
I think my apprehension is, I want to see this whole landfill, transfer station, garbage pickup, recycling put to bed. Like, it's been a year now, and we're moving forward, but I know things take time. But I think everybody would like to see it. I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but I think everybody would like to see some kind of resolution to put this to bed. And I know it just, when and I apologize for saying good money after bad money, but like, the plan going forward, like, I want to see something complete. Like, we talked about closing the transfer station and hiring somebody, but I see the transfer station is still open and we haven't hired anybody, and, it's just, I just want to see it finished. I know like a year's probably realistic from where we were this time last year, because, the previous council this was laid on us at about this time of year. And we had to make some decisions because we were kind of under the gun, because we were given a very short notice for the person that was, the contractor that gave it up. So I know it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction and we had to make some quick moves, but I'd really like to see landfill, no transfer station. The garbage pickup, I understand, is going a lot better than it was before, so that's great. But I just want to see some closure on this. Councilor Shine.
Mayor Ferguson, one thing I do think that we should decide right now as a council is the door. Because we don't want to be holding off on that. Why spend the money renting if we can get the door installed and get the truck
Yeah.
stored? I mean, I understand wanting to get some of the other items and questions answered for that, but I think the door, either way, needs to be addressed, come to an agreement on that and get the installation done.
Yeah, I think the door is the easy one in that.
Exactly.
Whether we keep the old truck or we get a new truck, they still need a home to live in. And we do have the money for the industrial mall, on that line item in the budget. It wasn't necessarily for that project, but it was initially scheduled for some electrical work. I'm sure most of us remember all that. But that's basically been kind of put on hold for the time being. So we will have the money in the budget to do the door without any impact to the final budget. So I think the door is a pretty easy one.
Councilor Knowles.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Is there additional utility in having the industrial mall with the door on it, like in the months that it's not being used for the truck storage, like in the summertime? Is there a use for that space?
I mean, it makes it a more desirable stall for sure. Comes down to, I guess, just a greater conversation of what the industrial mall is and what it's going to be. But an investment like that into the building would always just be fruitful more than anything, for sure.
Right, like could it be used for cleaning vehicles or like, I don't know what the drainage in that looks like in there.
Yeah, we do have a floor drain front and back, so it's gonna work out well. We've even on a high level thought even just, hey, it's a big enough stall that now we can throw our 3/4 tons in there on a Friday afternoon after a round of plowing and let them melt out, which is something that we only usually get to maybe do once or twice a year right now, just because of the limited space that we do have.
Okay, thank you.
To provide further clarity, though, I think if we're going to deem this stall Public Works Waste Management, it would be that, like, we wouldn't sublease it like in the summer months or something like
Oh,
that.
no, no.
We would find uses within the corporation. It's right next to the handyman shop. So, which again is a great space for our guys to do a lot of work in. To Tyler's point, what that will leave us with is the fire department, the Fix-It Club, the handyman shop, waste management. That will still leave us 2 full stalls, which is the old, we call it the old Osisco stall, which has offices in the front, a utility area in the back. And then we have, which was last rented out by North Stream, again, offices in the front, utility in the back. Those are still available for the original intent of the industrial mall, those startup businesses, or short-term accommodations for, contractors or something like that. So those will still be there. There was a request at one point for an expansion for the fire department for their new truck. There was talk about moving the Fix-It Club over. Unfortunately, those costs deemed it not practical at this point for us to invest that sort of money into another stall. So there will have to be future conversations about what will stay, what will go at the industrial mall and kind of the permanent. But when you look at building a new structure for us or renting from another business, this does make a lot of sense for us to utilize this space. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Martins.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Tyler, how much is the rent gonna be at the single stall over at the old car wash? How much is that going to be?
So you'll see in my report there, it was gonna be up around $15,000, for the winter season.
For the winter season, like 6 months then?
Yeah. So if we're looking at buying a 15 or even a $30,000 door, you're talking 1 to 2 seasons, let alone if we use it all year, that you're already paid back.
Yeah. Thank you.
So where did we land on this? Like I said, I just want to put this whole thing to bed because it seems like we kick the hornet's nest every few months on extra costs and, things that we weren't expecting. So hopefully we can, by year end, I know that might be optimistic, but by year end, we can have a resolution to everything: landfill, transfer station, pickup, garbage pickup, everything. I think that would be something that we could be proud of if we can finish all this off by the end of the year.
I don't think we're really coming to you with a lot of extra costs. I think maybe the reason you're hearing about it so much is because we're giving you continual updates so that you guys are kept abreast of the situation. Again, we could have just spent 40 grand or 30 grand on the truck and not said anything and then just carried on with our day, but we're trying to be, as fiscally responsible as we can here for the community at the same time.
Yes, Jason.
Yeah, and I agree. I think what you're asking is certainly reasonable. And now that we've been given firm direction from council, then we can move forward. So I think once we can get these last few things worked out, then I think it is very reasonable to say that, we'll get some good equipment that our guys can rely upon them. I think that the community has understood that there is a change, it's happening. And I think that we can get that locked down. And I agree. I think moving into the new year, we'll be in a much better position where everyone understands how the process works, and then we can kind of move on to other things. Agreed, yeah.
So going forward for next council meeting, we're going to have some options then? I think we agree on replacing the door. I don't think that's an issue. I think we can move forward on that if everybody's in agreement on that. But yeah, I'd like to see some options and some hard numbers on a replacement then.
Thank you.
Anybody, anything else? Is that enough direction, Tyler?
Great, I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move on to part B, recycle update depot operations. Tyler?
So as you guys remember, we were talking to CM about potentially doing garbage collection, depot collection, all that stuff. Going back about a month, we remember that we basically were removed of the option of doing curbside collection, which still stings a little, but we're making the best of it. Right now, we do still have the option of operating the depot, which would be right now the transfer station where you go and throw your recyclables into the bins. Moving forward, it'll obviously be out at Pipeline. So it's really just the agreement to finalize us doing that. It'll net us $18.99 per month, plus a little bit of change. Legal, of course, I have to inform you guys, has flagged a few issues with the agreement, much like most municipalities in our area. But for us, we feel it's kind of just the best to at least keep control of the depot, because from what we've seen so far, we don't seem to be getting that same level of service on recycle collection as we used to be getting.
Comments? Yes, Councilor Knowles.
Thank you, Mayor Fergus. This is being stored out at the pipeline.
It will be at the Pipeline once the transfer station is closed, yes. So right now, it's the transfer station where we have the 4 bins beside the shack. And then once we close the transfer station officially, all that will move out to Pipeline.
And would it require any additional human resources in order to execute this agreement with?
No, it will not.
Thank you.
And contractor's okay with the change?
Yeah, we've already basically told them that we're closing the transfer station. They said that's fine. We can amend the agreement to make sure the dates are in. So once we get approval on this, we'll have a locked in date for the transfer station because it'll be included in this agreement.
And GFL comes from Thunder Bay?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Zacharias.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Sorry, you said other municipalities were having legal issues by keeping control of the depot?
Other municipalities have been forewarned of the same issues that we were. So some have backed away because of just a variety of issues within, there's like 5 different contracts. The depot being the most favorable for us. There were particular problems with collections more than anything, collections and receiving facilities.
Okay.
The depot one isn't quite as bad or quite as red flag alarming.
Okay.
Because it's just a stock agreement. Sorry if I can elaborate. Like every municipality in Ontario got the same agreement. So there's a lot of things in there that, you know, small municipalities don't have that big municipalities do have, or municipalities in this area. Some of the timeframes were just, they were too broad that we couldn't meet them compared to municipalities down in Southern Ontario where most of this was kind of think tanked.
Anybody else? On that, and this isn't really on this agenda, but I know we have November 1st hazardous waste.
Yep.
Something, because one of the concerns we had was about people driving the Pipeline Road to get rid of their stuff. So if we could do that on, not necessarily hazardous waste, but scrap metal pickup, different things where we could have a regular day, maybe every quarter or every 6 months or something, where if I've got an old washing machine that I want to get rid of, I don't have to travel to the transfer station. I can know that, you know, twice a year, we're going to be picking up e-waste and, you know, that kind of stuff. I think that would be a good service, and I think the contractor would be happy to put a trailer there for the day, and because they get paid and we get paid, I don't know how it works, but just so people are aware that, you know, I don't have to take my scrap metal to the Pipeline Road, or I don't have to take if I got an old TV, you know, what am I gonna do with my old TV? Well, twice a year, we're gonna have an e-waste day that everybody can bring that stuff. Like I know it went over really well with the hazardous waste. I heard a lot of good comments on that already. And I think if we can kind of expand that, you know, twice a year with those other things, then that will alleviate a lot of the traffic for people having to go to the landfill. So
Yeah.
I just sort of suggestion kind of while we're on this topic.
Yeah, what we're generally planning to do right now would be a twice a year event, probably once in the mid to late spring, once everything's thawed out, once in the late fall, just before we get snow, basically open the transfer station up for 2 or 3 days kind of thing and let everybody do a cleanup. You can bring your scrap metal, your tires, your white metal, your e-waste, and then any brush that you have. Garbage won't be accepted, but
Right.
any of the free to dump stuff, you can just take it there. For those, you know, twice a year cleanups, basically getting ready for the winter and then cleaning up after the winter.
I think that's a good service for the people and, so they don't have to, so they're aware of, we advertise that these are coming, they're aware of it and just to reduce as much traffic on that road and people going to the landfill as we can, so.
Yeah, it was always kind of the idea to do that, and then it just comes down to staffing, right? We'll have to have 2 people basically in attendance, but for the couple days, it'll be a minimal cost.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Tyler. Anybody else on the recycle? No? Okay, and then we'll go to number C, bylaw number 44-23, an agreement with Bay City Contractors for the Mud Lake Culvert. So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Shine, seconded by Councillor McQuay. Resolve that bylaw number 44-23, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Bay City Contractors from Thunder Bay for the replacement of the Mud Lake Culvert to be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Cost is still the same?
Oh, yes, cost is the same, sorry.
Okay, in favor? Carried. And that's gonna be done still this year, Tyler?
Yeah, they're working on it. Trying to get materials lined up and finish up the shop drawings, so we're still cautiously optimistic we'll see them here anytime. I don't think that's gonna be a very long one, so it's like once we get them here, it's like 2 or 3 days probably, and they've got it pretty well wrapped up, so.
Great, thank you. And now we have a resolution moved by Councillor Shine, seconded by Councillor McQuay. Resolve that this council committee proceed in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. In favor? Okay, thanks. We'll move into camera.